Hello, welcome to a special year-end edition of The Parish Line, a production of CGov, the Calcasieu Parish Government Channel, about the events, programs, and policies of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury. In this program, we'll take a look back at 2012 in review and highlight some of the best and most important stories that we covered on The Parish Line. Calcasieu Parish has its first roundabout intersection that opened in October. J.P. Booth brought us that story and gave us instructions on how to properly use a roundabout.
At the intersection of the new East McNeese Street and Corbina Road extensions lies a new type of intersection, a roundabout.
The roundabout is at the intersection of East McNeese Street and Corbina Road. East McNeese Street is a project that was in conjunction with the City of Lake Charles and Calcasieu Parish to connect Highway 14 to LA 397. And Corbina extends from Highway 14, the east-west portion south of town, up to Prion Lake Road. One of the benefits of a roundabout is when you do approach, you yield to the traffic that's in the circle, and then when you find a gap, you can go. You enter the roundabout slightly to your right, and then you can circle around counterclockwise, and you can take any exit that you want. You can do an immediate right turn. You can go through around the roundabout a little bit and go straight, or you can make a hook and go left. But one of the additional benefits of a roundabout is you can actually go through the roundabout and make a U-turn right in the middle of the intersection.
But why did the parish decide on this instead of a traditional signalized intersection or a four-way stop?
Well, a roundabout has a lot of benefits over those traditional intersections. One is the safety aspect. They're much safer. They reduce delay, and they also reduce fuel consumption and emissions. In your traditional intersection, you have a lot of what are called high-angle crashes, which are your T-bone accidents or your rear ends or your head-on collisions, and they are usually high speed and they have a lot of energy in them when you do have accidents. With a roundabout, the angle of collision has been reduced to a much smaller angle, and with the way the roundabout is designed, you naturally travel through a roundabout at a much slower speed, usually around 15 to 20 miles an hour. So with the lower angles and the slower speeds, you have a lot less potential for major accidents. There's been some studies done that indicate that there's roughly a 40% reduction in all crashes in a roundabout relative to a traditional intersection. Your injury crashes are reduced by nearly 80%. And your incapacitating or fatal accidents are reduced by 90%. In your times like at night or early in the morning where you come up to a red light and you have to sit there for a full minute while the light makes it cycle, here you're a minute down the road already because you're able to just maneuver your way through the roundabout and go on. Gaps naturally form in the 15 to 25 mile an hour speed that allows traffic from all legs just to travel, find their gaps and go. You don't have to sit and wait when there's no traffic on the adjoining legs. And in a lot of traditional intersections, the major roadway gets the majority of the light, where the side roads would get they get a lot less time to get through the intersection, where with the roundabout with the gaps, they can just hit them and go. So there's a lot less delay.
In addition to vehicular safety, this new intersection provides safety improvements for pedestrians as well.
In a traditional intersection, you have 16 conflict points with pedestrians as they cross the street in just your regular two-lane, two-way roadway. With a roundabout, you reduce that down to 8. You also have much slower speeds as vehicles travel through the roundabout, and the driver's focus is usually in front of them rather than on a signal or a stop sign or things like that. There's also refuge islands between the travel lanes, so when a pedestrian crosses the road, they actually can stop in the middle, look one way, cross that, look the other way, cross that.
The roundabout does take big rigs and 18-wheelers into consideration by installing an apron for them to drive on.
There is actually a truck apron built into the design of the roundabout, and it's on the inside. You have a center island, and then you'll have a truck apron, and then you'll have your roadway. Normal, regular-sized vehicles will travel in the roadway, and the truck apron allows for the back axles of the larger trucks to track over into that area, allowing them to accommodate them through the roundabout.
The roundabout can also provide a visually pleasing look, as well as cost savings in the long run.
They're much more aesthetically pleasing. You have your island in the middle that you can landscape or put flagpoles, fountains. There's all kinds of things that people have done in these things that make them very attractive. You also, aesthetically, from the sound standpoint, you don't have people peeling out, slamming on brakes, things like that. So they're much friendlier in residential areas because they're much quieter also. Up front, there's a little bit more cost. Naturally, you're going to have more infrastructure, roadway, and that type of thing. But in the long run, it saves substantial amounts of money. One, in the fact that you have no lower maintenance costs. You don't have utilities from the signal lights. You don't have to replace bulbs. You don't have to work on, the timers and all of that. You also have the cost saved through safety. With the reduction in accidents, you save a substantial amount of money in fatality costs and injuries and property damage and things of that nature. So overall, up front they cost a little bit more, but overall they save quite a bit about it.
For the Parish Line, I'm J.P. Booth.
The Corbina Road extension is set for completion in 2013. Volunteers were on hand to help with a beach restoration project in Cameron Parish this past June. Molly Morgan gave us that report.
Louisiana's coastline continues to erode at an alarming rate. A recent beach restoration project took place down in Cameron Parish. Lori Cormier, Coastal Zone Manager with the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, explains.
It's a continual state effort to fight coastal restoration. So there are many nonprofits all over the state that are involved in it, and so they just pull together the funding they need in order to do the projects that they believe are going to really help save marsh and prevent flooding in the future. The State Master Plan 2012 that was just recently enacted by the governor is going to pump $50 billion into the state of Louisiana for the next 50 years. So this is the place to be if you're an engineer or any kind of coastal management agency, because there's going to be a lot of work going on in the state. Particularly, Calcasieu Parish is going to receive up to $10 billion for coastal restoration, because the reason we're so important, not only to Calcasieu Parish, we're also important to the world and the United States. If one of our 3 major ports goes down in Louisiana, a third of the world's population could potentially starve to death, because we import and export so much rice product all over the world. We're also 90% of the nation's outer continental oil and gas comes from Calcasieu Parish in Louisiana. 20% of the nation's annual waterborne commerce, 26% of the U.S. commercial fisheries, and we have winter habitat for 5 million migratory birds. So nowhere else in the nation is there a region that simultaneously offers global importance in habitat and as well as economic assets. And we have one of the United States strategic petroleum oil reserves, which is a huge asset to the United States.
Volunteers worked hard to install 9,000 feet of sand fencing along the western part of Cameron Parish's coastline.
The purpose of sand fence is to help collect sand as it's deposited here on the beach, in the hopes of building up some sand dunes. The sand fence behind me, beyond those fences is some really healthy, wonderful looking dunes, and we're trying to kind of protect what's there and expand the dunes further southward towards the coast. The goal there being, this is our first line of defense, we say, against storm surge and hurricanes, which Lake Charles and Calcasieu and Cameron Parish know the effects of all of that. So our goal here is, the more protection you can do here on the front end, the less damage that maybe potentially people would suffer further inland. It'll also help keep the salt water from the Gulf of Mexico in the Gulf and not into the more fresher marshes, north of here. You'll see sand start piling up around these fences almost immediately. To really see a full overtopping of the fence itself, that's a matter of years. But we've got fencing out in the southeastern part of the state that that we put in October of 2011, that you've already got about a quarter of it kind of covered in sand near the base. So it can build up rather quickly if there isn't a storm that comes and scours it all away. The other thing the coalition is going to do with some other partners is we're going to look to come back in either the fall or spring, and we're going to add plants around the base of these dunes, or on the base of the fence, kind of on the front side and the back side. And what that does is these plants work the same way. They catch sand and help grow a dune. But if we can plant on either side of the fence, it'll expand the width of that dune and expand kind of the sand catching capabilities of the area. So we're not, once the fence is in, we're not done by a long shot. We'll be back here a couple more times in the next year or so.
Coastal restoration affects not just Louisiana.
This crisis is not only just a Louisiana crisis, it's a United States crisis, and it's a world crisis. So we're going to do everything in Calcasieu Parish to try to prevent that from happening.
For the Parish Line, I'm Molly Morgan.
If you would like to volunteer for future coastal restoration projects, visit the website crcl.org. This is a special year-end edition of the Parish Line. We are revisiting some of the biggest and best features from our monthly programs in 2012. In September, we celebrated the first birthday of the MultiAgency Resource Center. Jessica Williamson gave us details on how the center has changed juvenile justice operations in the parish.
It's been a year since the Parish Juvenile Justice Services consolidated its resources into one place. Nearly 1,200 families have received services through the MARC, services which are no longer fragmented across the area.
What we did was consolidate the whole assessment process and delivery of services into one place, which is the MARC, which is the Multi-Agency Resource Center. And it has really saved us funding throughout the parish, and it made us much more efficient, and the timeliness for delivery of services has really just, it's really worked out well with that.
Because of the shorter response and processing times, law enforcement and other agencies can devote time to other issues. The center receives referrals from many different agencies.
It could be people who are providing programs or services, or law enforcement, for example. They use the MARC quite often, and I say law enforcement from the Lake Charles Police Department. All the municipalities use it as far as their law enforcement agencies. The Sheriff's Office. The school board is a big referral source to the MARC. Kids who are having difficulty in school and who are what we call are ungovernable in the school or truant in the school system can be referred to the MARC.
One of the key features of the MARC is its de-escalating environment.
I've actually seen it firsthand when parents are maybe walk through the door and they're actually crying and upset and don't know what to do. We de-escalate them immediately by either using conversation or by just the whole aesthetics of the MARC, and it's really worked out well for that.
The hours of operation are another positive of the center. Those that deal with the issues that the MARC facilitates every day acknowledge that problems don't only arise during normal business hours.
We really wanted to make it easier for the families to access the MARC, so we're open from 8 a.m. every day till 11 o'clock at night, Monday through Saturday. So we're pretty staffed most of the day. If a family is having a crisis in the home, or they just need somewhere to go where they can seek assistance and maybe say, hey, where can we go for this? They can come to the MARC. That does not necessarily mean that they will be going to court. It's their choice. They can come to the MARC. We can give them, point them in the right direction where they can receive services for their issues they're having. We do an assessment there also to try to help the family. Okay, we've done an assessment with your child. And that is a evidence-based assessment which we do. It's called the GIF, and it really measures where the needs are for the family, and then we try to plug those services to meet those needs.
The MARC provides an invaluable service to the parish in a fraction of the time. Bolin credits the success of the center to the cooperation of all the agencies involved.
I brag on the MARC because it's really one of its kind in the state, but it's actually being modeled across the country. The whole time and efficiency process that we've taken on, and I say this, for example, a process that used to take 45 to 52 days now takes about 2 or 3 hours. And so we've really, with the assistance of all the law enforcement area, DA's office, school board, our agency, the police jury, we've combined those resources, and we've made it a much more efficient process. And what, again, used to take 50 days now takes 2 2 or 3 hours.
For the Parish Line, I'm Jessica Williamson.
The center is a collaborative effort with the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury and the Calcasieu Parish Children and Youth Planning Board. Calcasieu Parish Planning and Development Director Jimmy Vickers retired in March 2012 after 32 years of service. During his tenure, Vickers spearheaded many major initiatives, including, most notably, the establishment of the first comprehensive zoning ordinances in the parish.
Originally, when I was initially employed here, I was working for MCAL at the time, but I was assigned to the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury. That's how I kind of got to know Mark McMurray and also Rodney Vincent. We were doing work on their behalf. One of the things, I guess, that happened is that they asked us to go ahead and try to do a new comprehensive zoning ordinance. And I was selected to do that. And during that time, which goes back from 1976 till just past, a little bit past 1980, we were able to get the first, basically the first phase of that document done. That happened January 9th, 1980, and I actually became a police jury employee during that time. So we had many public meetings while I still was with MCAL. Courtroom A, again, I mean, it was loaded with people. They had a lot of different compliments, and there were a lot of concerns, though, too, because this was the first time. The parish had never had any type of really comprehensive zoning plan during that era. So we were able to get the initial phase adopted, and subsequently other phases got adopted, and it was very good because we really, at that time, we really had some issues that were coming up, particularly with some of the industries and the way waste was being handled at that time. During that era, there were virtually no DEQ regulations. And so one of the first things initially that came up during that era was a company by the name of Impact that wanted to put waste in the salt domes over in Vinton. That was a huge concern for the public at that time. And subsequently, the parish, through the zoning ordinance and everything, was able to basically stall it. It was on some of the stream properties at that time. That was a pretty significant time, and many police jurors, the older police jurors and everything, although they weren't for, some of them weren't for comprehensive zoning at the time because they predominantly had rural areas, they understood that if we didn't do something quick, that we were going to be the commode of the United States.
Calcasieu Parish has changed drastically over the last few decades. One of the biggest challenges Vickers faced was the tremendous residential development in unincorporated areas.
Once those roads were done, we saw many subdivisions. It had some impact on, obviously, zoning regulations and everything, but what we did see is we saw quite an influx of people wanting to move where those roads were. That never happened before. We had a lot of rural roads and everything, but once we kind of got the asphalt going and everything, and you know, kudos to our Public Works Department. They did an outstanding job. We were able to work with them, and then it worked, you know, it was not only just the paving of the roads, but helping improve the drainage in the area. Those were all very significant steps.
Another big change is the onset of new technologies that make the job of planning and zoning much easier for the public. Two areas that have especially affected planners are the onset of social media and the development of the parish's geographic information services, headed by O'Neill Hebert, that allow numerous online interactive mapping and real estate services.
We have the technology now that we really didn't have in the early 80s. You know, we were doing colored maps and coloring them ourselves, and you know, now with what we have with O'Neill and some of these other technology type departments, it's just outstanding the kind of work that is being done here. So that has really been significant. And I think that the police jury has really done a good job in trying to be on the forefront of this technology that's out. And it's a shared technology now with, if you look with what O'Neill and them are doing with his shop and so forth, I mean, you know, you can get the maps and so forth. You know, you're right there from your own computer, and that makes it easier. We get a lot of good compliments about people, particularly that are involved with real estate and appraisals and that type of thing. It helps them with their job, and I think that they're very appreciative.
To give you an idea of Jimmy's career here, I'm going to be 50 years old this year, and when I graduated high school back in 1980, Jimmy was just starting his career. So his career has spanned a generation, and in that time, Calcasieu has seen a lot of changes, and Jimmy has been a big part of that change, guiding it in a positive way. If you go back to 1980 and compare the census population to 2010, we've grown 35% in the unincorporated area. So you've seen this huge migration. And with that comes a lot of demands on our services. Well, Jimmy has guided a lot of that in an orderly way, in a way that's prudent, with a comprehensive zoning map that was developed back in the 80s, long before you had a lot of people living out in these areas. And he was also responsible for a lot of codes that have been developed for the public's safety, whether you're talking about plumbing codes, electrical codes, anything related to something that people would want to make sure that their families are taken care of in the building of homes and businesses and so forth. So Jimmy oversaw what was an almost non-existent development type situation in the unincorporated area, certainly at the level of residential that we have, to what is today many suburbs and commercial developments now, and some industrial projects. And he's sort of overseen that rather large transformation to what we are today, and we can thank him for guiding that in ways that have made a big positive difference in Calcasieu.
I mean, Jimmy Vickers in the planning department, his work there has been legendary, I think, over the years. That's one of the tougher jobs. That's one that I said I never wanted to be the director of planning and zoning. I mean, if you've ever sat through a zoning case and seen neighbors that might have been friends for all their lives at each other's throats about whether a travel trailer needed to be parked in their yard or not, you know what somebody like him has had to go through over the years. So Jimmy has been a great asset and continues to be.
Jimmy is a solid individual. He's just got such high character, and in that position as planning and development director, you deal with a lot of people in the community, the businesses, you deal with a lot of elected officials, a lot of other agencies, and that person has the ability to influence a lot of things, and Jimmy's influence was always very positive, beyond question about his ethics, and that made him so effective in his job.
It's surreal thinking the day is upon us, you know, and but at the same time, I'm looking forward to retirement. With my 3 years at MCAL and then my 32 here, you know, I've had a great career. Just a lot of good things, many good elected officials, many good staff. I've had a great staff. I've just enjoyed them so much, and they've helped me. I mean, they're really what it's all about.
Jimmy has retired with his family in his native Mississippi, and Wes Crane was named as the new Planning and Development Director. The Calcasieu Emergency Response Training Center has grown into a multi-use training facility. Back in February, Margaret Higgins gave us an inside look at what the center has to offer.
The objective of the Calcasieu Emergency Response Training Center is to provide a facility to train volunteer and municipal firefighters with hands-on experience. Emergency Response Training Center Superintendent Mark Degenhart explains.
Our major thrust is on the municipal end for the fire departments in the parish. We offer open training on one evening per month. And we also offer training at any time the fire department really desires it and they can get on our schedule. and we're here for the fire departments.
With the increasing amount of vehicles on the road, car fires are on the rise. Caution must be used in combating this type of fire.
Vehicles these days present a specific hazard to firefighters because of the way they're built. They're built with lightweight materials. They're coming out now with more and more hybrid vehicles that of course have batteries in them. The lightweight materials are water reactive, and in some cases just the fact that the material is on fire and you apply water to it, it can indeed explode. So we've upgraded our vehicle fire training program somewhat to reflect these new conditions that exist out there.
Helicopter and landing zone training classes are also conducted at the center.
Acadian AirMed requires fire districts to provide a landing zone for any operations after dark, so they can get into those areas and get injured or ill people out. They will tell us what they need to see from the air, and as far as their actual landing site. You know, the criteria for that is pretty extensive. It has to be a specific width and a specific length, and the lighting for the landing zone has to be provided a specific way, because we certainly don't want to interfere with the aircraft's operation.
Dagenhart tells us how this center has impacted the parish.
One thing we have found out since the training center was created, and since we've been doing training for the volunteer fire departments in Calcasieu Parish, every fire department that has used this training center has dropped one insurance rating point. That's money in the pocket to the taxpayers in those fire districts.
For more information on the Calcasieu Emergency Response Training Center, visit their website at www.certc.net or call the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness at 721-3800. For the Parish Line, I'm Margaret Higgins.
More than 50 emergency response teams and fire departments from across Louisiana and Texas utilize the facility for their professional training. That's our 2012 In Review edition of the Parish Line. Thanks for watching. CGov staff is looking forward to bringing you more information about Calcasieu Parish in 2013.